It started with one look. Not dramatic, not cinematic, no slow motion, no music swelling in the background. Just a glance across a crowded room that lasted maybe a second too long and somehow changed everything. I almost didn't go that night. It was one of those low-effort house parties thrown by a guy I barely knew, the kind where people stand around holding plastic cups and pretending they're having deeper conversations than they actually are. I'd had a long week, my social battery was already drained, and I remember standing in front of my mirror thinking I could just stay in. I should have, because if I had, I never would have met Trent. The apartment was packed when I arrived, music too loud, lights too dim, laughter bouncing off the walls in a way that made everything feel slightly unreal. I grabbed a drink, nodded at a couple familiar faces, and did what I always do in situations like that. Found a spot near the edge of the room where I could observe without really participating. That's when I saw him. He was standing near the kitchen counter, talking to someone I didn't recognize. Nothing about him was exaggerated, no flashy outfit, no loud gestures, but there was something about the way he carried himself. Relaxed, grounded, like he wasn't trying to impress anyone and didn't need to. I wasn't staring. At least, I don't think I was. But then he looked up, and for a brief, almost imperceptible moment, our eyes met. That was it. No smile, no wave, just recognition. Like we both registered something at the same time, but didn't yet have the words for it. I looked away first. I told myself it was nothing. Just one of those random moments you forget about 5 minutes later. But I didn't forget. Not when I moved to a different part of the room. Not when I tried to focus on a conversation that I barely followed. Not even when I laughed at something I didn't hear. Because I could still feel it, that awareness. Like I knew exactly where he was without needing to look. Eventually, I did look again. And this time, he was already looking at me. It wasn't intense. Not challenging. Just steady. Curious. I felt something shift in my chest, subtle but undeniable. I broke eye contact again, this time with a small, almost involuntary smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. "Hey, you okay?" my friend asked, snapping me back. "Yeah," I said quickly. "Just tired." That wasn't true. I wasn't tired anymore. A few minutes later, I felt someone step into the space beside me. "Hey." His voice was calm, slightly deeper than I expected. I turned and there he was, closer now, close enough that I could actually see him clearly. Dark hair, a little messy like he'd run his hands through it too many times. Sharp eyes, but not in an intimidating way. Just attentive. "Hey," I replied. There was a pause. Not awkward, just unhurried. "I'm Trent," he said. "Xavier." He nodded, like he was committing it to memory. "Xavier," he repeated. The way he said my name did something weird to me. Not overwhelming. Just noticeable. "I saw you earlier," he added. I let out a quiet breath. "Yeah, I noticed." That earned a small smile from him. Not forced. Just genuine. "Didn't want to be weird about it," he said. "You weren't," I replied. "Well, maybe a little." He laughed softly. "Fair." Another pause. But this time, it felt different. Easier. "What brings you here?" he asked. "Honestly, I almost didn't come." "Same," he said. "My friend dragged me." We both glanced around the room at the same time, like we were silently agreeing on the same thought. "Worth it?" he asked. I looked back at him, and there it was again, that feeling from earlier. That quiet, steady pull I couldn't explain. "Yeah," I said, before I could overthink it. "I think so." His expression shifted slightly at that. "Softer." "Good," he replied. We ended up talking for most of the night. Nothing extraordinary, at least on the surface. Where we were from. What we did. The usual safe topics people circle around when they're still figuring each other out. But there was something underneath it. Something unspoken. Like we were both aware that this wasn't just another random conversation at a forgettable party. At one point, someone interrupted us, pulling Trent into a separate conversation. He glanced back at me before stepping away, not dramatically, just a quick look that said I'll be back without actually saying it. And he was. Every time. Hours passed like that. Talking. Drifting apart. Finding each other again. At some point, the crowd started thinning out. Music got quieter. People began saying their goodbyes. "I should probably head out," I said, checking my phone. "Yeah," he nodded. "Me too." We stood there for a second, neither of us moving. Then he said, "Can I walk you out?" I hesitated just for a moment. "Sure." Outside, the night air felt cooler, quieter, real. We stopped near the curb, neither of us quite ready to end the moment. "This was," he started, then paused. Unexpected. I nodded. Yeah, it was. Another pause. Then, more quietly, I'm glad you came. I looked at him, and I realized something in that moment, something simple, but impossible to ignore. That look from earlier? It hadn't meant nothing. Me too, I said. We stood there a little longer than necessary. Then he smiled soft, almost hesitant. I'll see you again, he asked. It wasn't confident. It wasn't assumed. It was real. And for some reason, that mattered more. Yeah, I said. You will. As I walked away, I didn't look back. But I didn't need to. Because I already knew. That one look. It wasn't the end of something small. It was the beginning of something I wasn't ready for. And somehow, I already didn't want to miss it. I didn't expect him to text me. That's the thing about moments like that, you walk away thinking, yeah, that was nice, but you don't really expect it to turn into anything. People meet, talk, promise to see each other again, and then life just moves on. So when my phone buzzed the next afternoon, I almost ignored it. Unknown number. I stared at it for a second before opening the message. Trent. Hey, it's Trent from last night. I hope this isn't weird. I smiled before I could stop myself. There was something about the way he wrote, straightforward, but careful, like he didn't want to assume anything. I typed a response, deleted it, typed it again. Me. Hey, not weird. I was kind of hoping you would. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Trent. Good. I wasn't sure if I imagined that. I leaned back against my couch, exhaling slowly. Yeah, same. That's how it started. Not with anything dramatic. Just messages that felt easy. We didn't rush into anything. No sudden, let's meet tonight, or forced intensity. It was slower than that. Intentional, but not overwhelming. We talked about normal things at first. Work, music, the kind of small, safe details you share when you're still figuring out who someone is. But even then, there was something different about it. He paid attention, not in an intense way, but in a way that made you feel like what you said actually stayed with him. A few days later, he asked, Trent, can I take you out for coffee? Or something low pressure, so I don't mess this up. I laughed under my breath reading that. So I don't mess this up. It felt honest. Me. Coffee sounds good. We met that Saturday. I got there early by accident, I told myself. But really, I just didn't want to be late. The cafe was small, quiet, the kind of place where people sit with laptops pretending to work. I ordered something I didn't really want and took a seat by the window, trying not to check the door every 10 seconds. When he walked in, I recognized him instantly. Same energy as the party, but calmer somehow. Like this was more him. He spotted me almost immediately and smiled. That same small, genuine smile. Hey, he said as he approached. Hey. We didn't hug right away. Just stood there for a second, slightly unsure, then both laughed at the same time. Okay, he said. That's less awkward than I expected. Give it time, I replied. He sat across from me, setting his coffee down, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. But it wasn't uncomfortable, just real. You look different, he said after a second. I raised an eyebrow. Different good or different bad? Different real, he said. The party version of you was quieter. I smiled slightly. Yeah, that sounds about right. He nodded like that confirmed something. I like this version more, he added. Something about that landed deeper than it should have. We talked for hours. And this time, it wasn't surface level. He told me about growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. About leaving because he needed space to figure himself out without constant expectations. I felt like I was living someone else's life for a while, he admitted. I leaned back, watching him carefully. And now, he shrugged slightly. Now I'm trying to figure out what mine actually looks like. There was something in his voice when he said that, uncertain, but determined. What about you, he asked. I hesitated. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I wasn't used to people actually wanting one. I think I've always known what I wanted, I said slowly. I just haven't always gone after it. He tilted his head slightly. Why not? I let out a small breath. Because it's easier not to risk things. His gaze didn't leave mine. Yeah, he said quietly. I get that. There was a pause. And then, softer. But some things are worth risking. That stayed with me. We didn't rush when we left. No sudden shift. No pressure to turn the moment into something bigger than it was. We just walked. Through side streets. Past people who didn't matter. Talking about random things again, but now it felt different. Lighter, but also more connected. At one point, our hands brushed. It wasn't intentional. But neither of us pulled away immediately. That split second stretched longer than it should have. Then we both stepped slightly apart, like we'd silently agreed to take things slow. Sorry, I said, even though I wasn't sure why. Don't be, he replied. We stopped near a corner, the afternoon starting to fade into evening. This was good, he said. Yeah, I agreed. It was. There was again that pause. That moment where something could shift. I want to see you again, he said. Not a question this time. A statement. I felt it in my chest steady, certain. I want that too. He nodded once, like that was all he needed. And then, after a second of hesitation, he stepped closer and pulled me into a brief hug. Simple, warm, real, no overthinking. When he pulled back, he didn't rush away. I'll text you, he said. You better, I replied. He smiled at that. And just like that, we went our separate ways again. But this time, it felt different. Because now it wasn't just a moment. It was something building. And as I walked home, I caught myself thinking something I hadn't expected so soon. This wasn't just about that first look anymore. It was about what came after. And I was already in deeper than I planned. Part 3, somewhere between easy and dangerous. I started noticing him in the quiet moments. Not just when we were texting or sitting across from each other at a cafe, but in between everything else. Like when I was brushing my teeth and caught myself smiling for no reason. Or when I'd check my phone, not because I got a notification, but because I wanted one from him. It was subtle at first. Then it wasn't. Trent became part of my routine without ever asking to be. We saw each other a few times that week, nothing intense, nothing labeled. Just time. Coffee again. A walk that turned into dinner. A random bookstore where neither of us bought anything, but stayed way longer than necessary. And every time, it felt easier. Too easy. That's what started to get to me. Because I wasn't used to things feeling this natural. With most people, there's a phase where you're calculating everything. What to say, how to act, how much to reveal without saying too much. But with Trent, I kept forgetting to filter myself. And he didn't seem to either. One night, we ended up back at his place. It wasn't planned. We were walking, talking about something random, I don't even remember what, and then he said, "Do you want to come over? Just to hang out." There was a slight hesitation in his voice. Not uncertainty, just awareness. Like he knew that question meant something. I should have thought about it more. I didn't. Yeah, I said. His apartment was exactly what I expected, and somehow not at all. Clean, but not in a forced way. A couple of books stacked on the coffee table. A hoodie thrown over the back of a chair like he'd taken it off without thinking. It felt lived in. Real. Make yourself comfortable, he said, heading toward the kitchen. Do you want anything? I'm good. I stood there for a second, taking it in. This felt different. Not like being invited over casually. More like being let in. He came back with 2 glasses of water, handing one to me before sitting down on the couch. I followed, leaving a small but noticeable space between us. At first, we talked like we always did. But the energy had shifted. There was something quieter now. Heavier, not in a bad way. Just more aware. At one point, the conversation faded. Not abruptly. Just naturally. And suddenly, we were sitting there in silence. I could feel him next to me. Not touching, but close enough that it mattered. You're thinking too much, he said softly. I let out a small breath. Am I that obvious? Only because I do the same thing. I glanced at him. About what? He met my eyes. This, he said. That word hung between us. This. I swallowed slightly. And what is this? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he shifted a little closer, not enough to close the space completely, but enough that the distance felt intentional now. I don't want to rush it, he said. Whatever it is. Me neither. Another pause. But I also don't want to pretend it's nothing, he added. That landed. Because I'd been doing exactly that. Acting like this was just casual. Just easy. Just something that didn't have weight. But it did. I know, I said quietly. We were close now. Close enough that I could see the slight tension in his expression, not fear, not hesitation. Just awareness. Like he knew this moment mattered. Like I did. You okay? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. You. Yeah. But neither of us moved. And somehow, that felt louder than anything we'd said all night. It wasn't about what was happening. It was about what could happen, and whether we were ready for that. Trent was the one who broke the distance first. Not suddenly. Not impulsively. Slow. Careful. Like he was giving me time to stop him if I wanted to. I didn't. When he kissed me, it wasn't overwhelming. It was steady. Like something that had been building finally had somewhere to go. I didn't pull away. Didn't overthink it. For once, I just stayed in the moment. When we eventually separated, neither of us said anything right away. We didn't need to, because now everything was different. Not complicated, just real in a way it hadn't been before. He rested his forehead lightly against mine, exhaling quietly. Okay, he murmured. I huffed a small laugh. Okay. Yeah, he said. That definitely wasn't nothing. I smiled slightly. No, it wasn't. We didn't rush after that. Didn't suddenly escalate things or try to define it on the spot. We just sat there closer now, the space between us gone. Comfortable, but also aware. Because crossing that line even gently changes everything. Later, when I left, he walked me to the door. Same as before, but not the same at all. I'll see you soon, he asked. I nodded. Yeah. And as I stepped out into the night, I realized something I couldn't ignore anymore. This wasn't just easy. It was starting to matter. And that's where things stopped being simple. After that night, everything felt sharper, not heavier, not complicated, at least not yet, just more defined. Like the blurry edges between us had finally come into focus, and now there was no pretending we were just two people casually spending time together. We didn't talk about it right away. That was the strange part. The next morning, he texted me like he always did. Trent, morning. You make it home okay? Simple. Normal. But I could feel it underneath the words. Something had changed. Me. Yeah. Barely slept though. A minute passed. Trent. Yes, same. I stared at that message longer than I should have. Not because of what it said, because of what it meant. We saw each other again 2 days later. No big setup. No, we need to talk. Just, want to come over? I said yes without hesitation. But this time, when I stood outside his door, I paused for a second before knocking. Because I knew. Whatever this was, it wasn't neutral anymore. He opened the door almost immediately. And there it was again, that look. Not new, just clearer. Hey, he said. Hey. We didn't hug right away. Didn't rush into anything. Just stood there for a second, both of us adjusting to the fact that we were no longer figuring out if something was happening. Now it was about what it was becoming. Come in, he said, stepping aside. Everything inside felt familiar, but not the same. Same couch. Same soft lighting. Same quiet atmosphere. But now I noticed things differently. Like how easily I moved through a space. Like I already belonged there in some small way. We sat down, a little closer than before. Not touching, but not pretending the distance was accidental. So, I said, exhaling slightly. We're just not going to talk about it. He let out a quiet laugh. I was wondering how long that would take. I glanced at him. You started it. I did, he admitted. No regrets. That answer came too easily. Too honestly. And somehow, that made my chest tighten. Yeah, I said. Same. There was a pause. Not awkward, just real. What are you thinking, he asked. I hesitated. Because the truth felt risky. But I'd already crossed that line, hadn't I? That this is going to matter, I said. His expression shifted slightly. Not surprised. Just focused. Yeah, he said quietly. I think it already does. That settled something in me. And unsettled something else at the same time. Does that scare you? He asked. I let out a breath. A little. He nodded. Me too. We sat with that. Not trying to fix it. Not trying to rush past it. Just acknowledging it. And that somehow made it easier. Over the next couple of weeks, things fell into a rhythm. We didn't label anything. Didn't sit down and define what we were. But we didn't avoid it either. We just showed up. For each other. Dinner at his place turned into staying late. Late turned into why are you leaving? Which turned into you don't have to. And eventually, it just became understood. I was part of his space now. Not as a guest. Not as something temporary. But not fully defined either. Somewhere in between. And for a while it worked. Because it still felt easy. Still felt natural. Still felt like something we didn't have to force. Until the first crack showed up. It happened on a random Thursday. We were out, nothing fancy. Just a small bar a few streets from his place. The kind where no one really pays attention to anyone else. We were sitting side by side, talking about something stupid, music, I think, when someone called his name. Trent. He turned instantly. Mark, hey. The guy walked over, clapping him on the shoulder. Confident. Familiar. You disappeared, man. Where have you been hiding? Trent laughed. Easy. Natural. Just busy. Mark's eyes shifted to me. And this is... There it was. That moment. Small. Quick. But heavy. Trent hesitated. Not long. Most people wouldn't even notice. But I did. This is Xavier, he said finally. Just my name. Nothing else. Mark nodded, already half distracted. Nice to meet you. Then he turned back to Trent. continuing the conversation like I wasn't really part of it. I smiled politely, stayed quiet, waited, but Trent didn't bring me into it, didn't shift closer, didn't say anything more. And suddenly, I felt it. That subtle, familiar feeling, like I was slightly outside of his world. The walk back was quiet, not tense, just different. He unlocked the door, stepped inside, tossed his keys down like everything was normal, like nothing had shifted. I stood there for a second before saying it. You hesitated. He turned, brows pulling together slightly. What? At the bar, I said. When he asked who I was, he exhaled slowly. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I asked. He ran a hand through his hair, thinking. I just didn't know what to say. That answer didn't sit right. You could have said anything, I replied. You just didn't. I said your name. Yeah, I said quietly. Just my name. Silence. He looked at me, something conflicted in his expression. I'm not hiding you, he said. I held his gaze. I didn't say you were, I replied. But we both knew. That wasn't the full truth. That night felt different. Not broken, not ruined, but no longer untouched. Because now there was something else in the space between us. Not distance, not yet, but awareness. That this whatever we were building wasn't going to stay easy forever. And for the first time since that first look across the room, I realized something. It's not the beginning that tests you. It's what happens after things start to matter. I tried to ignore it. That moment at the bar, the hesitation, the way I'd been introduced like I was just there, it wasn't enough to break anything. Not really. But it was enough to stay in my head. And once something like that gets in, it doesn't just leave. The next few days, Trent was the same. Texting me in the morning, asking how my day was, pulling me into his space like nothing had changed. And that was the problem. Because something had changed. At least for me. We were at his place again, a couple nights later. Same couch. Same quiet music playing in the background. Same easy conversation that used to feel effortless. But now, I was noticing things. Like how his phone lit up a few times, and he turned it slightly away before checking it. Or how he mentioned friends and plans without ever including me in them. Not intentionally, just naturally. Like I existed in one part of his life, and nowhere else. You're quiet, he said at one point, glancing over. I forced a small smile. Just thinking. Dangerous, he replied lightly. Yeah, I said. I'm starting to realize that. He studied me for a second longer than usual. What's going on? There it was. The moment. I could have brushed it off. Said nothing. Kept things easy. But I already knew I wasn't built for that. Can I ask you something? I said. Always. I hesitated anyway. Because I knew this mattered. When people ask about me, I started slowly. What do you say? He didn't answer immediately. And that silence told me more than anything else. It depends, he said finally. On what? He leaned back slightly, exhaling. On who's asking? I felt something tighten in my chest. Okay, I said quietly. And what does that mean? He ran a hand through his hair again, something he did when he was trying to find the right words. It means I don't always know how to explain this, he said. This, I repeated. Yeah. I held his gaze. You don't know how to explain me? That's not what I said. It's kind of exactly what you said. He sat up a little straighter now, tension creeping in. I'm just saying it's new, he replied. I don't want to label something before I understand it. I nodded slowly. That sounded reasonable, logical, but it didn't feel right. I'm not asking for a label, I said. I'm asking if I exist when I'm not right in front of you. That landed. Hard. His expression shifted something between frustration and guilt. That's not fair, Xavier. Then help me understand it, I said. Another silence. Longer this time. I like what we have, he said finally. I don't want to complicate it. I let out a quiet breath. There it is. What? You think acknowledging me makes this complicated? That's not what It is. I cut in, not raising my voice, but not backing down either. Because right now, this only works as long as it stays in here. I gestured around his apartment. And the second it steps outside, you hesitate. He looked at me like he wanted to argue. But he didn't. Because he knew. The room felt different now. Not hostile, but exposed. Like we'd finally said the thing both of us had been avoiding. I'm not hiding you, he said again, quieter this time. I met his eyes. You're not choosing me either. That did it. I saw it in his face, that moment where the truth hits, even if you don't want it to. I just need time, he said. And there it was. Time. The safest answer. The one that keeps everything exactly as it is. I nodded. Because I understood. But understanding doesn't make it easier. Okay, I said. And I meant it. At least partially. Because I wasn't asking him to become someone else overnight. I just wasn't sure how long I could stay in something that felt incomplete. That night, I didn't stay late. Didn't stretch the moment out like I usually did. I grabbed my jacket, moving toward the door while everything still felt calm. "You're leaving?" he asked. "Yeah." He stepped closer, not blocking me just there. "You're upset." I shook my head slightly. "I'm just thinking." "That's worse," he muttered. I almost smiled. "Almost." "I'm not going anywhere," he said, softer now. I looked at him, and for a second, I saw at the part of him that meant that. That wanted this. That wasn't trying to hurt me. "I know," I said. And I did. But that wasn't the problem. Because as I stepped out into the night, something settled in my chest. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just clarity. I liked him. More than I planned to. More than I probably should have this early. But I also knew something now that I couldn't unknow. Liking someone isn't enough. If you're the only place they let it exist. And for the first time since that night we met, I started wondering if I was already giving more than he was ready to return. The shift didn't happen all at once. There was no fight. No dramatic moment where everything fell apart in a single conversation. It was quieter than that. Slower. And somehow worse. After that night, I pulled back. Not in a way he could easily call out. I still replied to his texts. Still showed up when we had plans. Still sat next to him on that same couch like nothing had changed. But something had. I stopped leaning in first. Stopped being the one who closed the distance. Stopped acting like this was something solid when it clearly wasn't yet. And he noticed. Of course he did. "You feel different," he said one evening, watching me from across the room. We were at his place again. Same setting. Same routine. But not the same energy. "Different how?" I asked. "Like you're not all here," he said. I leaned back slightly. "I'm here. Not like before." There it was. I held his gaze. "Yeah," I said. "Not like before." Silence stretched between us. Not angry. Just honest. He stood up, walking over slowly, stopping a step in front of me. "Talk to me," he said. I exhaled. I already did. That wasn't. He stopped himself, running a hand through his hair. "That wasn't everything." "No," I said. "It wasn't." Another pause. Then, quieter. "I didn't want to push you." His expression shifted slightly at that. "You think you're pushing me now?" he asked. "I think I was carrying this more than you were," I replied. That landed. Harder than I expected. He sat down next to me this time. Closer. But I didn't close the gap. "I told you I needed time," he said. "I know." "Then why does it feel like you're already leaving?" That question hit deeper than anything else. Because I didn't have a clean answer. "I'm not leaving," I said slowly. "I'm just not ignoring things anymore." He looked at me, searching for something in my face. "And what are you seeing?" he asked. I hesitated, then told the truth. That I'm more sure about you than you are about me. The room went completely still. He didn't deny it. That was the part that mattered most. Instead, he looked down at his hands, jaw tight. "I'm trying," he said quietly. "I know you are." "Then why does it feel like it's not enough?" "Because it wasn't." But I didn't say that. Not like that. Instead, I said, "Because I don't know what I'm waiting for." That was the first time I saw it clearly on his face. Fear. Not of me. Of what this meant. "I've never done this before," he admitted. I frowned slightly. "Done what?" "Felt something that actually changes things," he said. That caught me off guard. "Trent, I mean it." He cut in, looking at me again. "This isn't casual for me. That's why I'm not moving fast." That should have reassured me. And part of me did feel it. But another part. "What does moving forward look like to you?" I asked. He hesitated. And that hesitation said everything. "I don't know yet," he admitted. There it was. The truth. Clear. Honest. And not enough. I nodded slowly. Not angry. Not even surprised. Just grounded. "Okay," I said. He looked up, confused. "Okay. Yeah. That's it. What else do you want me to say?" I asked softer now. He didn't answer. Because there wasn't anything else. I stood up, grabbing my jacket. And this time, he felt it. Really felt it. "You're doing it again," he said, standing too. "Doing what?" "Pulling away." I looked at him. "No," I said quietly. "I'm just not holding on by myself anymore." That hit. I saw it in the way his expression tightened. "I'm here," he said again. "I know." "Then why does it feel like you're already gone?" I stepped closer. Just enough that he couldn't pretend I was distant. "I'm still here," I said. "But I need to feel like you are too." His eyes searched mine. Like he wanted to give me that. Like he just didn't know how. For a second, I thought he might say something. Something real. Something that would shift everything back. But he didn't. And that silence? That was the answer. So I nodded once. Stepped back. And this time, I walked out. The air outside felt colder than usual. Or maybe it was just me. I didn't check my phone. Didn't expect a message. Didn't wait. Because for the first time since I met him, I understood something clearly. This wasn't about whether he cared. He did. I knew that. It was about whether he was ready to choose me. And right now, he wasn't. And the hardest part? I wasn't sure I could stay, waiting for him to become someone who might never get there. The silence after that night lasted 3 days. No messages. No hey. No are you okay? Nothing. And that told me more than anything he could have said. At first, I kept checking my phone. Not obsessively. Just enough to notice that it stayed quiet. I told myself he was thinking. That he needed space. That maybe this was part of it figuring things out. But by the 3rd day, something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not even disappointment. Just acceptance. I went out that night. Not to distract myself. Just because I didn't want to sit at home waiting for something that might not come. It was a small place. Quiet. Nothing like that first party. And that's when I saw him. Trent. Across the room. For a second, everything slowed down. Not dramatically. Just enough that I felt it. That same exact feeling from the first night. That look. He saw me too. And just like before, we held eye contact for a second too long. But this time, it felt different. Not curious. Not new. Clear. He walked over. No hesitation now. No uncertainty. Just direct. Hey, he said. Hey. We stood there for a moment, both of us taking each other in like something had changed. Because it had. I was going to text you, he said. I nodded slightly. You didn't. He exhaled. I know. No excuses. That mattered. We stepped outside. The night air felt familiar. Too familiar. Like we'd been here before. Just not like this. I've been thinking, he said. I let out a small breath. Yeah, me too. He nodded. I didn't text you because I didn't want to say something halfway, he admitted. I didn't want to pull you back in if I wasn't ready to actually show up. That made me look at him differently. Okay, I said. So where are you now? He didn't answer immediately. But this time, it wasn't hesitation. It was intention. I was scared, he said. Not of you. Of what this means. I stayed quiet. Let him say it. All of this, it's not small to me, he continued. And I realized I was trying to keep it controlled so I wouldn't have to face what it actually is. That landed. Because I knew exactly what he meant. And what is it? I asked. His eyes met mine. Steady. Certain. You, he said. My chest tightened. Not painfully. Just real. I like you, he added. More than I planned to. More than I know how to handle perfectly. I almost smiled at that. Almost. But I don't want to do this halfway, he continued. I don't want you to feel like you only exist when it's convenient for me. That hit directly. Because that's exactly what I'd been feeling. So what are you saying? I asked quietly. He stepped a little closer. Not too close. Just enough. I'm saying I want to try this for real, he said. Not just when it's easy. Not just when we're alone. There it was. The thing I needed. Not perfection. Not certainty. Just choice. I studied him for a moment. Really looked at him. And I could see it now. He wasn't unsure anymore. He was just honest. You're not going to get it right all the time, I said. I know. This won't stay easy. I know that too. And I'm not going back to feeling like I'm on the outside. I added. You won't, he said. No hesitation. No pause. That mattered. More than anything else. So I nodded. Once. Okay, I said. And this time, I meant it fully. He smiled. Not big. Not dramatic. Just relieved. Like something had finally settled. We stood there for a second longer. And then, naturally, we closed the distance. A simple kiss. Nothing rushed. Nothing overwhelming. Just certain. When we pulled back, he let out a quiet breath. Feels different now, he said. Yeah, I replied. It does. And in that moment, I finally understood what that first look meant. It wasn't about attraction, or curiosity, or even chance. It was recognition. Not of who we were back then, but of who we were about to become. And this time, we weren't going to keep it hidden. We weren't going to pretend it was nothing. Because some things don't start loudly. They don't need to. Sometimes, everything really does start with just one look.